very well, so we're upgrading it.
Yeah.
Like I'm running Vonage from my phone.
We're broadcasting, just so
Okay.
you know. Hi, everybody, or anyone.
Or hi, Dan. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Scott. Hey, good to see you, man. Good to see you. Hey, we're doing this from across an entire country. This is pretty interesting. Okay. All right, we got a couple attendees here. Good. All right, we're not just talking to each other. All right, that's cool. All right, so welcome to anyone that's showing up, and welcome, Scott, for having this conversation with me, this discussion. I just thought that it would be great, to have a conversation with you and talk about membership stuff, kind of talk shop, geek out a little bit on membership, and see, and hopefully other people can chime in and provide us with information or ask questions, or, since both of us have, spent, 20 plus years working with associations, trying to build and, do membership development, I thought it'd be fun just to get together and talk membership and see what happens. So welcome to everyone. And thanks for doing this, Scott. This is going to be great.
My pleasure. As we talked about last time we ran into each other, there's always plenty of stuff to talk about on the membership front, so it's good to do it.
Oh yeah. I think it like I said, like I told you then, that we could probably talk for hours on even just one of these topics, because of all the things that we do regularly with just again focusing on membership all the time.
Yeah, and we can talk for hours and just watch those number of visitors drop and drop.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see. Maybe we'll go viral, or it'll just be a sickness. I don't know. So one of the topics I mentioned that I wanted to talk about was member engagement. I think you actually attended one of my at the DC swap. I kind of did that little demonstration of how I look at and I perceive member engagement is as if you were a party host. You invited folks to a party. How are you going to treat them when they show up at your party? And for those that may not have seen it or have not, because I regularly put this out there onto social media and other presentations I do. Basically, the concept is that, hey, if you invite someone to a party, then you're the one that should open the door and invite them in to your party. You're the one that should bring them around and introduce them to the other party guests, and have start some conversations with them. You should be the one that shows them the resources, the food, the party games, the activities and other events that are going on within the party, the TV and the sports that are going on. Just getting them to go in, bringing them around and really making sure that they feel at home and that they are familiar with at least something and someone within the party, so they can feel comfortable. And that's the way I think the provocative statement I always use is that it's really the organization's responsibility to make sure members get engaged. It's not the members' responsibility. And I think a lot of organizations can a lot of them may even agree with that, but some of them may sit back and say, well, may not be doable. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as you and I talk, and you and I have spoken before, we're going to be on the same page with a lot of this stuff. But right. I'm not afraid to be contradictory. But on this front, we're totally on the same page. I think that just because of history and just because of tradition, associations have been and are still very, very good at reaching out to their members to get them to buy things, to get them to do things, right. to volunteer for committees, to do whatever they want to do. They're very good at that because that's inherently been what they've always done. If you look back years ago, it's sort of back to the Field of Dreams of if you build it, they will come. Right. Associations were a done deal. They were a known commodity. Members and prospects would join and then renew because you're just there and that's the way society works. I don't think that that's the case any longer. And so in addition to getting people to register for your conference, in addition to getting people to volunteer for your committees and councils, you do need to engage them and you need to make them feel that they're part of your community and part of your organization. and not just access. And you're not just reaching out to them for access into their wallets and into their checkbooks.
Right.
And so I think that is very, very important. And many associations are still struggling with how to do that and what does that mean. I was just on a membership section council call for ASAE, and one of the topics that came up was, as usual, the engagement piece and tracking engagement. And over time, or I should say historically, tracking engagement means, what did they purchase? What did they attend? That, to me, just as sort of you started with, that's not engagement. That's purchase history. That's important information to have. It's important data to have. But that's a different type of engagement than what you and I are really talking about, which is truly getting them to participate in your community in a more meaningful way, not just in a customer way. Okay,
so let's talk about that for a second, because I always kind of looked at, okay, if they're purchasing, that's a certain level of engagement. Right. If they're especially if they're purchasing or registering for an event that they're actually going to go to, and there's going to be networking, and there's going to be time for them to actually really engage in person in those type of ways. And then webinars, if they register for those, they can chat and get to know other people that are participating in some cases. But you're talking about when you say when they engage in a meaningful way. Can you kind of tell me what you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of different ways to really look at it, but I think that you are right. Buying something, purchasing something, register for something shows that there is a certain level of engagement. An interesting thought just popped into my mind, but in many ways, that's sort of on a customer/purchaser engagement level, right? You're buying something. So if you were Coca-Cola, or if you were another big product company, or a for-profit conference, you're trying to get people to buy. Right. And so they are engaged through purchasing. I think associations offer and can provide and need more than that. I think that they need their members, trade or individual, it really doesn't matter because we're still talking about people. They need to truly be engaged with the organization more as a whole and feel like they're part of something. I mean, I always kind of laugh when when you're doing a survey or something and it says, how closely connected do you feel to the Coke that you just bought?
Right.
I don't. Maybe it's because I'm a marketer and I'm jaded. I don't feel close to that Coke. Do I prefer drinking a Coke over a Pepsi? Nothing against Pepsi if anybody from Pepsi happens to be listening to us. But it's just maybe Coke has done a better branding job. I have no idea. But do I feel closer to Coke than Pepsi? Yes. But do I feel any real connection to the Coke that I'm drinking? No. I should feel a connection to the association that I'm involved with because I'm a member of it and I can actively participate as an individual or as a company. Much different type of engagement than being a registrant for an annual conference or being a reader of a magazine. And so I one of the things that I found interesting that you said is there's a level of engagement when you go to a conference, but then what you really want them to do is actually be engaged while they're at the conference. You want them to feel part of something at the conference, not just a purchaser of that conference registration.
Right. And I was thinking the same thing when you talked about, that meaningful engagement. So, then they're part of some type of committee or subcommittee, or, they're part of some group that's working on something, that's really important to the mission of the organization. That's meaningful. That's really something that they can really, sink their teeth into. I think one other point I wanted to make with that was, when they do, from the membership perspective, the issue that we have is that you have all these organizations that have these large conferences and they have a lot of people attend, and some of them join just to attend and get the discount. And then, after the event itself, they have no interest, right? So really, as from a membership perspective, we're always looking for what do we do to engage them beyond the event and make sure that engagement continues and they continue feeling that meaningful level of engagement that you're talking about throughout the entire year.
Yeah, I mean, and you jumped right into my head with that one. That's what you want. You're not going to be able to engage them every single day. I mean, yeah, you can sort of look at ASAE and say, we get messages from Collaborate every day. So by reading them, we are engaged on a certain level. But for most people, unless they're probably crazy like I think me and you, they don't actually get to those digests or get to all of those emails that we're getting from Collaborate every day.
Right.
But you want them to feel like they're part of your organization all year round. You don't want it to just be, to use your example, you don't want them to be engaged for the 4 days at their annual conference, because then from a membership perspective, what do we want them to do? We want them to feel as part of our organization, part of our community, involved or engaged, whatever you want, definite, whatever word terminology you want to use, right, so that they renew the next year, so that they do participate, so that they can be, that their lifetime value and their lifetime commitment is high, that they're not just attending something or they're just not buying something.
Right. And yeah, and you touched on the whole lifetime value, which I really, again, there's the concept. I think a lot of organizations, tend to look at things kind of what you were talking about before. Okay, we get them in as a member and then we sell them a bunch of stuff. Okay. And that increases the lifetime value. But really, you're not going to have much lifetime value if they don't have much lifetime in your organization. And so you want to try to build that engagement that creates the retention side of things and really retains them over a long period of time. And one of the things I think a lot of organizations do when it comes to engagement, it's you mentioned the build it and they will come, concept, the Field of Dreams, and really the way I look at it is more of a lot of these organizations are building some great engagement vehicles that they put out there to their membership, these online communities and, these almost like internal social networks or, whatever it is, even the member directory is a way for, people to engage, but yet they just put it out there and kind of dump it out there and say, okay, go edit and have fun. And discuss whatever you want to discuss. And, unfortunately, I think they're realizing that these communities really sit there and kind of flounder or they're dormant,
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the idea of having an online community or a private community is awesome. I think that that's one of the big things that differentiates associations from for-profit companies. Some of them do a good job of forming those communities for profits, but I think that we inherently, because we are membership organizations, have a sort of a leg up on them. But communities aren't going to build themselves. They never will. I mean, I shouldn't say they never will. In rare instances, yes, you're going to have a crazy active membership and they're going to jump all over that. But I'm sure you've heard stories just like I have. Well, we just purchased XYZ for an online community. It's floundering. It's terrible. So all we're doing is spending money. Well, okay, there's two things you can do about that. One, you should have done the research to see if your folks are truly interested in participating, or maybe tested or betaed with something free like LinkedIn or Facebook groups or something like that, where you didn't have to put any money in initially to see if there was traction and then maybe move them over. But two, you've got to feed it. You've got to get people to do it, to participate. And that is some of that membership engagement that you and I are talking about, which is you've got to feed it. You've got to start it. You've got to get volunteers. You've got to get champions to go on there and help you out, because otherwise it is going to flounder. Most people aren't, maybe there are ways to do it, but most people aren't just running to their association going, wow, I've got to participate today. I've got to participate today. It's just not, people are busy, they're just not going to do it.
Right. And again, with some of these, it's you're asking them to log in again and create a whole nother profile and those type of things. And, people really have a hard time with that. And I think we could get into, even deeper conversations about this one, especially when it comes to, how does like a small staff association, dig in and actually find the resources? Like you're saying, you have to find volunteers that actually will do a lot of the work and keep things going, or, make that in that connection, whether it's by phone or email or through the online community to keep, engagement going. And that's a whole nother conversation, because there's, like I said, it's the responsibility of the organization. Well, that means there's going to be some resources that need to be, invested, whether it's time or human resources, you really do, and financial resources. Yeah, you're going to have to really find some way of doing that. And some of these small associations, it's difficult and challenging. And I think there are ways to do that. It's just a matter of kind of figuring out what works for each individual circumstance.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you brought up resources, because I think that is a critical piece of all of this. And when you're talking the type of engagement that you and I are talking about, it's even more important for many reasons. But the one I want to sort of bring out is that engagement is not going to have a direct correlation to dollars. It's not a one-to-one. Right? You can send out an email asking people to register for a conference, or you can send a postcard or direct mail piece, make a phone call, whatever it is. And there is a fixed dollar amount attached to the outreach for you to do it. And there's also going to be revenue directly in return. The feeling of being engaged doesn't have a dollar amount attached to it. It should increase your retention rates. It should increase your volunteer participation. It should hopefully, all boats should rise, like you might have more people at your annual conference. But if you have a restrictive or a tight budget, or just a budget that you're being held to, it's sort of like branding used to be, right? Brand advertising rarely had a call to action. But if you're able to look at it from a long-term perspective, it's going to increase your revenue. So how do you get through that? You know, it's like if you're just saying, we need to get folks engaged, and it's going to cost hours during the week, it's going to cost technology, and it's going to cost money. And somebody says to you, well, how are you fitting that in your existing budget? Wouldn't you rather just send out a postcard and actually generate revenue directly? Yeah, but it's a very short-term focus.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring that up, because we're talking about how you add an online community and you're adding to your value proposition, right? And so when you're talking about value proposition, well, a lot of times you do want to place values, like specific dollar values on what is that community, what is the value of that community to a member? What's the value of advocacy and government relations? That type of thing. You want to be able to reflect that back to your members to help them understand how much value they're receiving as they, make their decision to renew or not. And so that's, yeah, it's, it's really hard, because there is not that one-to-one like you're talking about from engagement to dollars,
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges with membership as a whole, is proving what's valuable to your members and your prospects, right. But then also, membership is not a purchase, right? If membership becomes a purchase, like you mentioned earlier, all right, I'm gonna join because I can go to the annual conference at a discount. Mm-hmm. Well, you're starting that hamster wheel, or the carousel, or whatever you want to call it, with people going in and out and in and out. And we could also talk for another hour about the value or the negative of including membership as part of your annual conference fee. But that's the thing, is membership is not a one-time purchase. Yes, it's a one-time a year revenue source, but membership is not a one-time purchase. If you don't get people involved or get them to understand the value all year long, they're not coming back, or the likelihood of them coming back is that much less.
Right. That transactional relationship is not one that works well for membership. You have to have more than just the transactions that are happening regularly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, let's. I want to kind of switch topics and talk about lapsed members, because that's. I always get stuck with this one in a lot of ways, because there's so many different definitions of what a lapsed member is based on whatever organization the membership professional is working with. How do you define lapsed member?
I think that there's a couple of different ways to define lapsed member. I mean, if you look at it just straight up, a lapsed member is someone who has not paid their dues by expire.
Right. Okay.
So,
right.
Your question brings up a lot for me, because there's, how do you track it in your database, in your AMS, right? Because are they a new member versus when do they become a lapsed member? Are they an expired member who's still receiving benefits? So there's looking at it from that perspective, which, unless you want to, I don't really want to go that direction, because everybody's going to define it differently. And some people are going to continue to serve benefits even after somebody has expired or lapsed. Some organizations are not. It really just depends. I look at it more from a membership marketing perspective, which is your lapsed members, the people who have expired, are always going to be the most likely folks that you're going to get back, or organizations that you're going to get back.
Correct.
So call it win back, call it a lapsed member campaign, whatever you want.
Reinstatement, right?
Reinstatement. Those guys are important. And guys, I mean men, women, companies, just the general guys. But some organizations that I have experienced don't. Yes, once you expire, they reach out to you. And those people who have been lapsed for 60 to 90 days are always going to get something, whether it's a survey or a we want you back or whatever. But then for many reasons unknown to me and sometimes unknown to the association themselves, they're just gone. They sit in their database roles back there in the technology and the computer, and they never reach out to them again. They may reach out to them for conference, or they may reach out to them to buy something. But those win-back reinstatement campaigns just stop. And that to me is a bit crazy because those folks know who you are. They've had some experience and they may not have realized they left. 1 or 2% may have had a really bad experience or they're not interested, but it's so much easier to get your lapsed members back than it is to get your never members.
Right. And it's such a shame when I start working with a new organization as a client and we start talking about, membership recruitment. That's the first place I go. I say, okay, let's get a sense of your, former members for the last maybe 5 years or so, 3 to 5 years. And so you look at that data and, when you say, well, what have you done with this data? And they haven't done much, or they say, well, we keep doing it, but we don't get much response. Oh, okay. But to me, and a lot of times they make that excuse that, they may have left the career or, gone and done something else and it's not relevant to them anymore. And it's like, well, to me, you do bother them enough, you send them enough to where they finally come back and say, look, this is not for me anymore because I'm out of that profession. All right, then we take them off the list completely and don't send them anything anymore, right? But how are you going to know that unless you've actually actively worked on that list and, to try to work them, try to win them back on a regular, constant basis?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that, and I think I took you slightly tangential to your original question, but I do think that reinstatement and lapsed members and win back is crucial, and not enough associations are doing it. But to me, let's just say 95% of the people that you try to, or companies, the members that you try to win back don't come back. To have a 5% response rate on reinstatement, I can almost guarantee you is going to be higher than whatever percentage you're getting on your new prospects. Right. So why would you spend more money and invest more time and resources than less?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Dan, I know you're monitoring. Are you going to go to Nicole's question?
Nicole's question is basically, sorry, I just put it down. Yeah, so you can answer that. You can start by answering that one. What's the best way to contact those lapsed when it's been over 6 months?
I strongly prefer a multimedia approach, so multi-touch.
Multi-channel.
Yeah, multi-channel. It's going to depend on your resources, right? You may not be able to do 2 or 3 different things, but I think to have the greatest result, and I sort of describe this as the one-trick pony effect, and that there is no one-trick pony anymore, that there is no one single medium or outreach option that is going to get to everybody, because we're bombarded every single day with so many different marketing messages. So again, and this hasn't changed over time, it's just there's more options now, you got to get people's attention. And so I would strongly recommend, if you can afford to do direct mail and you should have the current addresses for these folks, or as current as you can, because they've only been gone for 6 months. And I actually don't think you should stop just at 6 months, but I'll just address that question. You should have a pretty good email address for them. You may even have a phone number for them.
Right.
So anyway, depending on your resources, financial, human, technical, I would combine all 3 if you could.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. I also mentioned and tell people that I actually like having a period of silence. I don't know how well you agree with me on this, but a period of silence after they lapse before they get that next marketing or even any communication from the organization, to make sure they miss us. That there is this need that that's not being met, that we can come back and say, hey, we miss you. And we really feel like what we're doing now is even better than what we were doing before. Can you come back? And some are a little bit too anxious about that period, that they want to get the marketing out very soon afterwards. But to me, it's almost like let's give them some time. It's like a relationship. You're in a relationship with someone. If they really if they broke up with you, let them miss you for a while before you come back and say, hey, nice to see you again, or whatever.
Yeah, I think there's again, looking at it from a more of a marketing angle, which is what you were kind of addressing.
Yeah.
There's, to go back to Nicole's question, that lapse when it's been over 6 months. First of all, I think that let's just use that 6-month mark because it was brought up in the question. I would recommend that anybody who's lapsed within the last year, you reach out to them, and you can give them that sort of that period of, all right, we're not going to talk to you for a little bit, so we will miss you. I do think that you've got to try and get them back for, let's say, 30 to 60 days after they expire, because oftentimes they just haven't gotten around to paying it, or they missed the invoice, or whatever it might be. But I would say that from, let's just say, and these aren't hard and fast rules, I'm just sort of not making up, but just giving us guidelines. I would say 60 to the end of that first year, if you're going to reach out to your lapsed members, which you should be, don't offer them something special to come back.
Okay, good. I like that approach, because then it's more, well, so you're basically saying it's like an extended renewal notice or grace period communication, basically.
Yeah.
Then maybe they'll be like, oh yeah, that's something that we wanted, that we did include in the budget, that we now can afford to do that. So I agree. But and the thing is, though, what you're kind of alluding to is a pet peeve of mine, where people, membership professionals, will sit there and say, well, we have too many, they're just, when we ask them why they didn't renew, they just forgot, and they do want to renew, and they went through the entire grace period of 90 days or something, and then they still didn't renew, and they just came back and said, no, I forgot. Now, either your grace period, communications are not working well and not performing well, or your renewal series itself is not performing well, or these people are just giving you an excuse, because it's either, and it could be that it's performing well, but they truly did just ignore everything that you sent them.
No, and that's why I kind of mentioned, I completely agree with you. And you mentioned some really good points. One, if someone hasn't renewed, if they missed it, or they claim that they didn't see it or whatever, yeah, there's something going on with your renewals, because they're not doing it, or you have not proven yourself valuable during that membership term. Because if people are able to ignore and not get benefits for a period of time, it means they weren't truly utilizing or feeling engaged, back to that term, during their membership term. Right. So offering them something special in that first 9 months where they're no longer a member, if they didn't really miss it to begin with, then they're just you're giving them free stuff, right? Yeah. If you offer them a discount, oh, we're sorry you left, we're now going to offer you 3 months for free.
Right.
All right. Well, why is it, if they didn't value enough that first time to renew on time, what's going to prevent them from doing that again and again and again? So,
right. So we have a question in the Q&A. John sent us a message. Thanks, John, for hanging in there. He's saying, I'm curious to know how common it is for associations to make a distinction between renewing members and reinstated, previously lapsed members. AMS systems we have worked with don't seem to be able to handle this very well. They want to lump everyone in together as renewals. Good. This is a really good point. I've seen a lot of this happen.
Yeah, I think you need to have an internal definition of what reinstated is versus current member versus lapsed member and all of those things. And you need to work with your AMS as much as you can to get them.
And that's the reason I bring this topic up, is because, you have to define lapse first, and then you can decide whether they're really renewing members or members that are reinstating or rejoining the organization. Right. And that, to me, is the crucial point. And you need to define that as a membership professional or for your program to create these things, because what bothers me is when you get someone like you did, where there's a period of silence, and then you give them no offer but say, hey, you can come back and reinstate your membership, and they do. Is that part of your retention rate or not? See, to me, anything before the defined lapsed period, that's part of your retention rate. I would not include those ones that I just talked about into your retention rate.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think that every association has to create their own definition. But after a certain period of time, they're a reinstatement, or they're, I don't even know exactly what you call them, but they're a reinstatement. They're not renewing. Right. After a certain period of time, they're just not renewing. They're coming back. I mean, we could go down a complete rabbit hole here and talk about, well, what do you do with their original join date? Do you keep it?
Right.
And so, I mean, there's a lot there, because then you get onto the appreciating and recognizing your members. So what if they were gone for 2 years and you keep their original join date? Does their anniversary, is it still 20 years, or because they were gone for 2 years, it's actually 18? And like I said, we can talk about that forever because there's so many different variables there.
Right.
But those are things that each individual association needs to determine, and they need to define.
And the AMS should be able to support whatever definition that you're putting out there and deciding on as policy for your membership program. And the original join date is a good solution to that. And it comes in as a factor to make sure that then you have this join date field that can change, and then you can define things as new versus renewing in the system by having that third field. You have the original join date, the join date, and then expiration date. Those three should be working together to make sure that you define it as a new member or rejoin even versus a never member and then a renew versus renewal and reinstatement. You can call all three things. So, well, we're going past 1 o'clock, and like you said, we could talk hours on these and go down those rabbit holes, because the more I wrote some notes, and I'm like, boy, we do need to have more conversations, because these little nuances really have a huge effect on a significant effect on whether you can grow your program and really have it more efficient and effective.
Yeah, and those are, it's interesting to me that you stole my words by accident, because as I've been talking to people, I keep coming back to effective and efficient. And some people might look at that and say it's the same thing. And I'm not going to, I know we've been talking for a while, so I'm not going to go into what the Scott Oster definition of effective is versus efficient. But no matter how large your organization is or how small your association is, you still need to be effective and efficient in your marketing period. But it's especially true with your membership outreach and your membership communication. We've all got, to whatever level it might be, limited resources, whether that's human, financial, or technical. So we always need to make sure that we're being effective and efficient. And I think that that's very, very important for everyone to realize that, we can talk 101 all day long, but some of these basics really, really, really need to be nailed down so that you're not spending time on things that are not going to get the results that you're looking for. And from a membership perspective, that's critical. It should, every day you should do basically everything you can to be effective and efficient. And many associations aren't. And I know there are a lot of reasons why, but it should always, that to me is sort of the baseline that you should balance all of your activities against.
That's awesome. I completely, endorse that. And I feel as though, the biggest, what you're really talking to is more the fact that membership programs have got to be, sustainable, and they are a sustained, product. It's not something that just, you sell it and it's done. You've got to be effective and efficient if you're going to maintain and sustain what, as you grow. If you become more effective and efficient, then you can grow, exponentially. If for some reason you got viral and your membership grew, really quickly, it's almost like then you're going to find out where you're not effective and where you're not efficient.
No doubt.
Break down and fall apart, and you're going to realize, wow, I should have fixed that before we got this big. And that's it's always something that should be on the mind of any membership professional, because it's you want to get there.
Yeah, agreed completely.
All right. Thanks, Scott. This is cool. This is great. I want to do this more.
I'm with you. Whenever you want to do it, let me know.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely will call you, and we'll work some more times out and throw this out to the masses, just to see who wants to come and listen in. But hey, thanks, John, for attending. We really appreciate that question that you mentioned, and thanks, Nicole. And tell your friends. We'll do this again.
All right.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
See ya.
See ya.